Patricia Windrow, sitting at the Cable Easel, bringing you a program of painting and drawing. Working from life is the main part of this program and my technique, and not working from other photographs, other paintings, or from the imagination, but working from life. And every time I do a program, I bring in a still life. This one is called Still Life or Study with Orange. Instead of just an ordinary orange, I have peeled one. It's going to be a small painting. Many times there is no real cognizance of the charm of small paintings, but every time a small painting is displayed, there seems to be an immediate rapport. This is a 9 by 12 inch painting. Not at all like the ones that one sees on the TV, 30 by 36 great big deals. This is what I would hopefully going to produce is a charming small painting with these three chosen items for the subject matter. I look at it, I try to transfer what I see. That's the third dimension, this is the second dimension. So working from life is the challenge of doing that, the translation of the two dimensions. It is probably one of the reasons that fine arts painters decide to go ahead and become painters. It's the challenge to make that happen. So, drawing first. You cannot start to apply paint on a canvas unless you have some plan of where it's going. I'm going to draw it first. You see there, the subject matter is a very simple, and I acquired that little vase from the local thrift shop at Mather Memorial Hospital in Port Jefferson, so it is something that is available. That itself is not available, but lovely little things like that. Discarded treasures from other people's lives are available in these thrift shops, and if you select them, then you've got instant props of unrecognized and certainly not cliched designs. This is all wood. It's made of wood. It's got a lovely line, and I'm going to try to tell the audience that it is made of wood. That is done through observation, very careful observation, nothing left to the imagination, and trying to get first of all, the texture of that particular vase, and as compared to the texture of the other things, which I've picked. Namely, the orange is obviously a very different texture than the vase made of wood, and then the little sort of ceramic French creamery, which I found in another thrift shop, which was, let me see which one. I sort of haunt these places to try and find props for my paintings, and so all of this is acquired in a very personal manner. I find that the selection of things to paint is sometimes a question which is asked me, what do you know to paint? And I paint, of course, things that inspire me and things that I find myself attached to. So a little piece like that can be the subject of a painting and then become a possession. And then it's always very intriguing to see that what you have acquired for as your own personal taste turns out to be the subject for a small and hopefully enchanting little painting. There is something quite amazing about the texture of this very simple piece between the peeled part and the part itself, and then of course the lovely spiral pattern that it makes. The little ceramic piece, I use the distance between the orange and the belly of the little creamery to find out just exactly where I ought to place it. And the belly is about this far away. I'm reducing this whole thing in size because of the small size of the canvas. But the placement of these things can be used in what is known as reference points. The reference point of the side of this is what I'm using to place it. The shape of it, I assume that people who want to paint this kind of thing know how to draw some. If you don't know how to draw, then draw it on paper before you start attempting it with a brush full of paint on a piece of canvas, which would cost considerably more than a piece of paper. So maybe a rehearsal is what it should be called, that you rehearse how to draw these things. I find that little ceramic pieces like this with designs on them teach you a great deal, that it's not the design which is intriguing, but the shape, even though the design has kind of waylaid you into thinking that the design is the important part, but what it is actually is the shape of the piece. The design is only incidental. It sits on a little pedestal. It has a rather whimsical foot. It's also slightly battered, which interests me because I want to see if I can tell you that it's battered by the way I am going to interpret its lines and its texture. If there are little chips here and there, such as there are in the handle, that's one of the challenges of painting antiques and things that you find that maybe have seen a hard time. I think I'd better get this a little bit taller. All right, let me change my brush. This is a brush that I use. This one is called a striping brush. By the way, I found a wonderful new art store in Patchogue called The World of Art on South Ocean Avenue. It's to be remembered for the people who live locally that that's a place to go and find art supplies that is within reasonable distance of this cable viewing audience in Suffolk County. There is another art store that I go to, but it's in Nassau, and it's something of a trek to get there. So The World of Art is a nice place to know about. All right, let me begin with the most obvious, and that is the wooden vase. I'm going to take some white. I'm going to take some Van Dyke brown, which is familiar from other techniques, but I don't use it as the sole color on my palette. This has got a touch of orange, some Van Dyke brown, a little bit of raw sienna, and the orange is what is going to give it that warm glow that you see in the subject in front of me. I'm also going to put it in as a base coat for the entire piece. I'm using a number 8 red sable round cut brush, and this is pretty much an overall color of the vase, but it is going to get its darkness on the shadow side and its darkness also on the other side. So a touch of alizarin crimson is going to give me the warmth that I need, because the Van Dyke brown is pretty much of a dead color. And so I'm going to put the darkness on the side here and then blend it with a kind of a dry blending brush that is going to give me the smooth technique, because I need to have that smooth. This is a smooth surfaced object. Just like all kinds of other props that you have, you must pay attention to whether or not the skin of it, and the skin of this is of course the exterior surface of the vase, is smooth. So it should be blended as best you can. The wonderful thing about oils is that it blends because it does not dry quickly. People speak to me about acrylics, and I find that acrylics do not serve my purpose because I want things to blend. The shadow of that green plant, or green, it's pine needles actually, just a branch from the tree outside my studio, is what I'm using as a floral decoration available to everybody. I don't go to florist shops and spend a great deal of money on flowers and props. I like to find what is available at hand. Let me put the shadow of the pine needles, which is important. It's going to give that third dimensional look. The shadows can be interpreted. It does not have to be an actual faithful rendering of the shadows as they fall, because we're not doing an illustration for a catalog. I'm doing a painting, and painting is, a lot of it is interpretive. So all of these shadows, that's better, isn't it, when I pull it forward. So let me try to keep this forward for you so that we don't get the very brilliant reflections from the wetness of the oil. I just wanted you to really be clear that you can see those shadows from the little pine needles. Unimportant as they may seem, they are very important in the final analysis of this picture. There they are. And if we can get that shot back again, you'll find that the reflection on the piece is brilliant, but that the shadow seems to transect that brilliant highlight on there. So something you learn every time you look at something, something new pops up. I'm using a pure white for this highlight. Yeah, and there's a little sort of a suggestion of another one here. So I'm going to put that, the shadow transecting that. I do believe it does that. See, that's what I'm talking about, working from life. It's never ceases to be fascinating as to what happens to these things. Yeah, I think the shadow is, in fact, transecting. Yeah. It is. There is also a kind of a nice highlight at the neck of the bottle, but it's not as white. It's a little bit paler, and it runs through here. Okay. Well, see that there. I must pull it forward so that you can see clearly how those fall. Well, let me I think I'm going to save the doing of the pine needles until the end, because we may not have time to get into this orange, which is a very complicated piece of subject matter. I'm going to now, well, okay, fine. I'm getting some sort of signals that because my canvas is in a precarious position, because I want you to see it without any reflections, I'm going to break in a very short moment to be able to adjust that for you. All right, let's get to the orange. The orange is obviously an orange. It is a base of white and a base of yellow, base of cadmium orange, mixed until such time as you believe you've come to the proper tone. The orange itself is much deeper in tone than the skin, but I'm going to cover it up with all that white pulp. So the base coat of this is going to be much darker than what it might appear on the monitor that you're looking at, or on my own particular still life. So I'm going to put some more white and let me see, where's my red? Here it is. To deepen this part of the orange, and I'm going to put it in as a base coat and then darken its sides as I go along. The fact that I drew this first is the only way that one would ever be able to pull this off, because it is a drawing problem. There is a complexity about this spiral peel. That's one of the reasons that I did it. I do for whole fruits often enough to want to be able to introduce and investigate what happens when you have another shape. This has a touch of green in it because it's, well, they pick them green, and they tend to have sometimes some green in the peel. I'm going to, that's just to denote where this thing overlaps the other one. Okay, keeping the brush clean, a little bit of turpentine. Let me get in there with some of the pulp color, which is predominantly white, but it's also got a touch of yellow because it's a creamy white. And let me see, maybe that's enough. Here we go. Maybe that's not white enough. Let's see when we take it in there. Yeah, well, it's all right. So the pulp hugs the meat of the fruit. Is that white enough, I wonder? Yeah, I think it is. If it isn't, we can always add it later. The advantage of oils is that one can intensify color when one needs to, or make it paler or make it darker. All right, we have here the pulp on the inside of the peel. And with any luck at all, this whole thing will begin to make some sense as soon as you get the funny components of it clearly set. As I say, when you do this kind of thing, you can't guess it out of your mind. You've got to have it there. And even though it seems difficult and complicated, it is much easier to do it than to try to figure out how to do it in your mind. There is no way that the human brain can remember this kind of a shape and mysterious kind of happening. Let me get a little bit of the pulp on here, and that will show us what the sections are, and how the pulp sort of covers and obliterates most of the orange meat inside. There's a lot of it on the top. It's all there for us to look at, as you can see in the reference material. It's all in front of you there, and to be treated like the portrait of something. And when you work on still lives, and you've maybe toyed with the idea of doing portraits of people, doing still lives with shapes like this is the precursor to being able to paint the human form. All the globes and spheres are in these objects, and all the textures are in these objects that will give you a basic ability to decipher what you're looking at some other time when you decide maybe to do some portraits. I'm going to break now for just an instant so that I can readjust this canvas so that you can really see what I'm after. So don't go away. I'll be right back. Back again, working on our composition called Study with Orange, a peeled orange, that is. And hopefully these reflections are now a little bit less distracting. I'm going to just spend one moment or two more on this part of the orange, giving you some of the background color for all of this, and so that you can kind of get a feeling that what we're looking at has now been faithfully transferred to the canvas, and that is done by giving you the background at the same time. Okay, I have a feeling that, yeah, there's the piece. Oh, this goes up much higher. All right, there you have how to correct the errors which are not as obvious until you look at them again. The advantage and real challenge of working from life, so that you can go back to your subject matter and see where you went wrong or right. I'm going to do a little number on this vase. The program is so short that I have to jump from one to the other to be able to get as much information as possible. I'm trying to get you to see what I do about texture. The texture of the vase is now obviously going to be different. And fortunately, with the camera work here, we go from back and forth from one to the other, and makes it extremely obvious that using the reference material back and forth is what makes all of this quite possible to understand, because the camera is being used as my eyes, or in other words, we're trying to get the camera to see what I see, something which is one of the problems of working from life and not relying purely on some formula set of just do anything that comes along, and working without reference material, working strictly out of somebody's imagination. So you can go back and forth and see what I'm looking at and see whether or not, determine whether or not it is in fact accurate. Sometimes, because of the speed with which I work, there are some inaccuracies, but trying to keep that at a minimum, I'm now mixing some mauve, some of the Van Dyke brown, which I had at one point, as the dark areas of this white vase, which turn extremely dark under the brilliant lights here. So the underneath part, even though that's a white little creamer, it has some very dark spots. Something that you have to believe when you see it. The inside of it is also quite dark, even though, as I say, the basic little thing is in fact white. Something to once again, to speak for the observed business of painting. When you observe it, you are given the opportunity to understand that white objects do in fact have extremely dark areas in them when the lighting is of a certain quality. So here's the lower part of this bowl of the creamer becoming quite dark, and of course the patterns are distracting. They make you quite forget that it's still a white vase that is just interrupted momentarily by the darkness of the floral pattern on it. So underneath we have the dark thing with a little shadow that goes sideways, which tells you that this curves, which is one of the intriguing things about working from life. So let me get a little bit of this white back up here on the spout, which is not quite as brilliant as elsewhere, but it's still lighter than the shadow part. And it's blended into this place, which makes you see that the little spout sticks out and blends in here. Now, because this is a white vase, I've kept all the colors below white so that I can get a highlight. How do you put a white highlight on a white object? Well, you keep it all under the white so that when you put this in, you can see that even though it appears to be white, it is not white enough for me to be able to not get the highlight. These are things which can only come when you have this information given to you. I learned it through trial and error because I have not been formally taught. All these things have come out by deduction and observation on my part. The lovely light side of the inside of this vase, well, I can probably blend that out a bit and make it a little bit less harsh. So I have a little border that has to come in, and I believe that looks much darker than the white itself, even though it's, let me see if I can get that a little bit darker and give you the thickness of this little creamer at the by putting this border in here. And this one is quite dark, and it's kind of battered because it's old, so it has a kind of a rusty look about it back up here. And it has a paler area here. These are all very small details which maybe nobody really cares about, but if the painter is painting and observes it, then he's going to care about it. The inside of this is a little bit pale because the white porcelain has worn off the handle. There is a rather light area here on the top of the handle that hasn't been broken off yet, and there's the detail of that. Just one smart, oops, no, this goes up this way. Okay. I'm going to get the flowers in there, but I'm going to get the darker pattern, which is a very deep blue. I'm using some pure Prussian blue on here, thinking that possibly that'll be enough without too much fuss. Here are the two little dots on one side. Here comes that one swirl, which kind of does this. Done in one stroke by the painter. These are all hand-painted little things, so when they're painted by hand this way, they will look probably more genuine than if they had been stamped out with a stencil. So the little hand painting is very convenient when you're doing a representation because they were originally hand-painted by a human person. I'm going to use my small striping brush to put the border pattern in. I have to lean on the easel and try and steady my hand, which is the way one must do these things. Don't for a moment think that you can hold this at arm's length and do the the pattern. No way. You have to have a little bit of leverage to be able to run this line around here. Okay, now that I got my small brush, I'm going to continue these three little thingamabobs here. This is a little Italian piece, and it's nice and simple. Some alizarin crimson is going to give me a little alizarin crimson and white is going to give me the color of that flower, which is nothing more than a kind of a lazy daisy flower arrangement. I'm sure that these things are done by the millions in a factory with people just sitting and doing the simplest possible design, but they have a country charm to them, which I find, sort of irresistible in general, as opposed to maybe some of the more elaborate gold and very highly painted things. I kind of like the peasant quality that these things have. A kind of a green leaf up here will make this a rather faithful rendering of this design. And probably one of the reasons that I picked it was to show you how to handle the design thing on these things, that you're not really interested in making it look like it is going to be printed in a magazine. You want it to have more of an artistic feeling, and therefore it can be simplified and only slightly interpretive as you go along. The Prussian blue is plenty dark enough for the pattern of this navy blue. Oops, here's two more underneath here that I hadn't noticed. Okay, 1 and 2, and then some little border comes around the base. And there's nothing on the handle, and there's a little dark one here, and it looks to me like there's some activity going on back here someplace. Yeah, that's got something going on back there. Not to be fooled with for too long. There's a kind of a yellow arrangement. Oop, my brush is too dirty for that. There's a little bit of a sort of an umber and sienna arrangement back there, which I'll pop in here only for accuracy. Well, so here's your little painted vase with a black middle. Let's put a middle in that black flower. There you have it. Well, there you have it. I don't have it at all. I'm going to do these pine needles and show you the style in which you can do the pine needles. You're going to definitely need this brush, a brush like this with thinned out paint, very watery. The background should be prepared beforehand, but the shortness of our time does not allow me to prepare the background first of all. If I were to do this or do it again, I would prepare the background first with a pigmented thing. This is merely a wash on the background, but it's going to serve the purpose to show you how this technique is done with the individual pine needles. Cannot do it any other way but one at a time. No great big house painting brush is going to do this for you. This is the way it's going to do. You learn that the center thing here has got the needles coming out of the center, and they all go in this direction in one way until they come to the end, and then they're going to go in that direction the other way. This is all observation from live subject matter to be used as a sample of how you work from life and how it is actually much more rewarding to work from life because you've got the material there just itching to give you all this information. As you can see, that's quite dense down here towards the thing, and here are the little pieces that are being whose shadows are being cast on the vase itself. And this is, of course, interpretive, but we did learn, I did try to show you the anatomy of this piece of this little pine needle thing, whereby the centerpiece is the determining design. That is what you must learn. The ground upon which all of this is sitting is just a black felt cloth, to be filled in almost without any sense of texture. It is so black and it is so dark that it does not really need to have anything more. And after all, we are merely using this as a study. It is on a circular table. That's why there is this rounded pattern here. It can be put in perfectly black. It's dramatic. It serves the purpose of the color scheme of a pale background and a dark foreground and a dark ground upon which all this is standing. The material is so black that it doesn't really have any shadows. Well, as usual, the time has been far too short. the lesson has been very condensed and very quickly done, but possibly with enough information for you to be able to understand what it means to work from life. As I bid you farewell, I'm going to thank you for watching this program. Tune me in whenever you see it listed on Cablevision 6, Suffolk County. Patricia Windrow at the Cable Easel saying bye-bye.